Hey, what's up? Hello everyone, welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports, and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
And my name is Dyl, and we have a lot to go over today because we are continuing our post-Cannes Oscar prediction series with some craft predictions. But before we dive into that, if you're new to the channel, definitely consider dropping a subscription, a like, a dislike, a comment. We would love to hear your thoughts, and we have new Oscar content almost every day on this channel. Let's not waste any more time. Kick things off with what I think are some of the most cool nominations, and those are the original score and original song. And Matt, I believe this month it's with you.
It is. I get to talk about music this month, and we know so much more about music, because up until now, we hadn't heard anything. Now we're starting to hear music in trailers. We're starting to hear songs being released. Starting off, original score. I have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse winning. And
that checks out.
It is a fantastic score. It creates an entire new lexicon of leitmotifs and ideas in the music that the first movie did not have. This is actually completely in direct opposition to what I said a few weeks ago when I said there's no way Dune gets a nomination because sequels don't get nominations unless they're John Williams. But here I am, a hypocrite. I have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse winning this category. If we're talking Dune Part 2, which you're going to see right now on my chart, I have it all the way down at 10th place. And I don't think Hans Zimmer is going to do that much different in the score, and I think voters are going to look at that and go, do we really want to award this again when it's mostly the same score? Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has the benefit of being a score that a lot of voters didn't give a shit about for the first movie. Hell, a lot of ordinary people didn't give a shit about it for the first movie. People loved Spider-Verse. I didn't hear anyone talk about the score of the first movie. It's all people talk about for the second movie. People love this score. This is going to be a critics leader, just like the Batman was last year, but we know how that turned out. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is going to carry that hype through in this category. I do think that it wins here. Again, the music is just simply incredible.
I did really like the score in Across the Spider-Verse, and to me it all comes down to is this movie a Best Picture contender?
Yes.
If it is, it could win, or at least in the conversation, like a top 15 type movie, it could get in, maybe have the chance to win. I would just need to see be a sweeper, though. I think it's probably pretty good for a nomination, but I don't know if I would go all the way to say for a win.
I think it will be a sweeper, because if you look at the rest of this list, I'm not seeing anything else that feels like a sweeper, because at number 2, I've got the Zone of Interest. I've heard amazing things about the music in this movie. I've also heard that there's only 10 minutes of music in this movie, and that what there is so incredibly haunting and memorable, and the movie starts off with just an overture that is apparently so haunting, and it gets you in the mindset for what the Zone of Interest is trying to do. I think that's great for a nomination. I think that there's an angle for a win, but the thing about this is that there's not much music in that. Now at number 3, I've got Oppenheimer. As much as some people might say, well, there's your sweeper, I just don't see Oppenheimer doing all that much. I think it's gonna get a nomination here. Ludwig Göransson seems like he's doing something really amazing. I'm gonna wait to hear the music to say more about this. At this point, I wouldn't put it in winning contention over a score that we have heard or a score that other people have heard. Oppenheimer is like a solid number 3. If Ludwig Göransson does a good job, it's in, but I think it would take something really, really unique, really special to get him that win. Remember what happened with Tenet. Then at number 4, I have Past Lives, another score that we've heard, and this is a really good score. It's just also not a very flashy score. Honestly, I really only have Past Lives in my score top 5 here because I think that the movie is going to be such a big deal in Best Picture. It feels like something that comes along with it, the way that last year Everything Ever All at Once got a score nomination, even though at first people were saying, it could miss that one.
Past Lives, I actually just got to see it, and yeah, I really like the score. If, like you're saying, it's a Best Picture frontrunner, it's going to be loved by the Academy, score would be an extra, give it. It doesn't have to be to the level of Everything Everywhere, but think Banshees from last year. Banshees was a very well-received movie, and it tacked on a score nomination, one where it maybe didn't need, but it was very worthy. I would say there's an argument for Oppenheimer winning, but also I fully get the point that Göransson doesn't need to win because with Tenet, you could say maybe that was due to Warner Brothers just not giving a shit about the movie, or you could say that he just won for Black Panther. Does he need to get a second one right away? And Zone of Interest, I think you made great points. If it was more score, maybe it could be in win contention, but it does have what people have said a very memorable one for how short it is.
So then we get to my number 5 slot. Really, 5 through 7 for me could be shifted in any order, but right now I'm going to say number 5 is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. It's out in theaters now as we're recording this. I have not seen it yet. This is probably John Williams' last score, and if that's the case, people are going to want to give John Williams a nomination. Now, the Academy is not a hive mind, and this movie is not getting great reviews, so it's very possible this just gets left on the cutting room floor when we get to awards season. Are people really going to remember the mediocre Indiana Jones movie? I don't know, so that's a big question mark, which is why there's also number 6, The Killer, which is Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross. They've gotten nominations in the past for David Fincher movies. For Mank, they won for The Social Network. Of course, they also won for Soul, but that wasn't a David Fincher movie. But they do great work with David Fincher. They should have gotten nominated for The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Gone Girl. I assume The Killer is going to have great music. It has been test screening lately, and apparently their score is not done, so their score has not been in the test screening, so we don't know anything about this score yet. I'm coming around to The Killer overall. I think this might be Netflix's big movie in the race this year. After everything I've said where I've said it's not going to be, I kind of do think that The Killer will be their big push. My last one of my 3 possible contenders for slot 5 is Killers of the Flower Moon. I had some strong arguments, I think, in the past for why this was a win contender, why this was top 5. And since this movie's now premiered, we've heard so much about Killers of the Flower Moon, and you know what I haven't really heard people talk about in this movie? The score. I still think it has a great argument for it, and maybe the score is really good and people have just been raving about other aspects of the movie first. If it was a win contender the way I thought it might have been, I feel like we would have been hearing more people talk about the music than we have been.
Yeah, I've seen some people say the score is fun, but it's not like the greatest aspect of the movie. If Killers of the Flower Moon would be like an eventual winner, it would be something very similar to All Quiet on the Western Front last year, where it wasn't really the most talked about thing, just the movie was just so strong at the end of the day.
So then at number 8, I have Poor Things. We've heard some of the music from what I assume is the score in the trailers. It's interesting. It's different. It sounds very childish. It sounds like some people might think it's annoying, which is why I don't have it in my top 5. I really like it, but I think it would need some critic push. As much as I want to predict a ton for Poor Things, I can't really justify it. Then at number 9, I have Asteroid City, another score that we've heard, and another score like The Zone of Interest, where there's just not a whole lot of it in the movie. What there is excellent. We've had 3 years now of Alexandre Desplat being snubbed for the Oscar. From The Midnight Sky, where people thought he would get in 2020, to The French Dispatch, where people thought he'd get in 2021, and then Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which came out last year, and he got snubbed for again. Asteroid City looks like the one he's gonna get snubbed for this year, unfortunately. Like I said before, at number 10, Dune Part 2. It just seems like more of the same from Hans Zimmer. I don't see why the Academy would have to award something that's just fundamentally the same music as the first one.
I think I would agree with Dune Part 2 in terms of winning. Why wouldn't Zimmer get in for Dune Part 2, assuming Dune Part 2 is a top 5 contender in Best Picture? I think it really just comes down to how strong of a player it is in picture. If it is on the upper side, like the first one probably was about, I would say the first was probably number 5, then yeah, it's in. But if it's on the bottom half of Best Picture, then yeah, I could see it possibly missing.
See, I don't think it has anything to do with Dune's picture prospects, because I think Dune is very, very strong for picture. But the whole reason why Star Wars got those nominations, I mean, it's Star Wars. Dune isn't Star Wars. When we're thinking about who is nominating, the composers branch, the music branch of the Academy, Star Wars probably inspired 90% of them to become composers in the first place. If you think about why John Williams gets those nominations for doing a score that is exactly the same as all the other scores, it's because he's John Williams and it's because it's Star Wars. And Dune, it's just, the music isn't that iconic. Honestly, I feel like I'm being generous putting it in my top 10. I would have had it lower, but I feel like I would be too much of a hypocrite if I said that I have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse at number 1 as a sequel and Dune at number 11, 12 because it's a sequel. It's in my top 10 because I don't want to be too much of a hypocrite. I just don't see what Hans Zimmer's going to bring to the table that wasn't there in the first one. I'll just rattle off a few that I'm interested in, but not confident to put it in. How Do You Live? At one point I had it my number 1. We're gonna know very soon a little bit more about this movie because it's going to be releasing in 2 weeks in Japan. We're going to hear if the music is good, but this would need to be a massive critic success and a massive critic push. It's not going to happen now, especially since Spider-Verse is already in the race. We're not going to see a second animated movie become that big of a critical sensation. As well as Wish and Wonka as the 2 musical options that could have really, really good music. I mean, with Wish, we saw Encanto get into the top 5 just a few years ago, so this is very, very possible. So I feel really strong about my top 10 right now, better than I have in the past.
Well, you did score, so why don't you follow that up with Best Original Song, because I'm looking here at your list here, and I think that we have some big, strong disagrees.
We're going to probably disagree on a Spider-Verse song, which is in my top 5, but I won't talk about it first, because first I have to talk about what I think is a lock for the win, and that is the song This Wish from Wish. This song exists. It's out there on the internet, and I dare you, go and listen to Ariana DeBose sing This Wish and tell me this is not going to be a radio sensation. Tell me this is not going to be the next Let It Go. I think it's just going to steamroll this season. Have you heard the song, Dylan?
I have not heard it outside of the trailer, but it sounds good in the trailer, and Ariana DeBose is a great musician and a great actress, so I'm really excited to see this movie and hear the song in full.
I mean, it's out on YouTube. You can check it right
It
now.
is.
I know I've been very hesitant on Wish, but I think Disney is going to push the shit out of this movie, especially an original song. At number 2, I've got Am I Dreaming from Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Dylan, you can't... How do you not like this song? This song is incredible.
I don't not like it. I just don't think any of the songs on the soundtrack stand out from the other one. And even in our subreddit, when people are like, oh, I want this song, I'm like, what song was that? I feel like a lot of people online had that same sentiment too, because you go on various other pundits like, oh, what songs y'all think are getting out there? And people say a Spider-Verse song, but they don't agree on a Spider-Verse song. I don't know. I just feel like I get the point. If they like the movie, they could throw a song in. Then you go back to the first one, and Sunflower was that zeitgeist song that was super popular and was popular before the movie came out. But regardless, that song failed to get in. And I just feel like if they're going to reach into the rap genre, which they rarely ever do unless it is with a big Best Picture movie, think Black Panther with Kendrick Lamar, I just don't see the push for this happening at the moment, but who knows?
Into the Spider-Verse didn't really have that power to push Sunflower into the conversation the way that I think that this does. And yeah, there might not be a consensus. Some people might say Hummingbird, some people might say Annihilate being the Spider-Verse song, but I think Am I Dreaming will just become the consensus later on because it is the credits song, the song that everyone leaves the theater hearing, and it's the song that I think people are going to go back to on the soundtrack the most. Then at number 3, I have taken out Gonna Be You from 80 for Brady. I'm so sorry, Dylan, because Diane Warren has a documentary coming out about her, and you bet she's going to be writing a song for the documentary about Diane Warren. Untitled Diane Warren documentary is at number 3, but Gonna Be You from 80 for Brady, the other Diane Warren song, is down at number 9 right now. Then at number 4, The Color Purple. It won't be the song that Halle Bailey is composing for the movie. It's gonna be the song that the original composers of the musical write for it. I don't think that this is gonna be an amazing song, nor do I think it's gonna be a win contender. Always, when you get a Broadway musical adaptation for the screen, there's almost always a song that's added for the movie that's just worse than everything that was on the original soundtrack. The same way that Suddenly from Les Mis, Beautiful Ghosts from Cats. Yeah, Suddenly actually is one of my favorites of the genre, but that's kind of what I'm saying The Color Purple will follow in the trend of. I watched Chicago again, and they have one of those songs too. The credits song, I Move On, which was nominated at the Oscars, is the worst song in the movie. But then at number 5, I have a song from Wonka. We also don't know what is going to be in Wonka, but I just have a really good feeling that something in here is going to really click with the Academy. Number 6, I've got For the First Time from The Little Mermaid. Oh, I'm gonna take a huge L here because every time I talked about best song with The Little Mermaid before, I always said, oh, it's probably gonna be the Scuttlebutt, right? And then we heard Scuttlebutt, and immediately it was like, oh yeah, no, that's not the Oscars song. For the First Time is my number 6. I don't think it's gonna make it in at the end of the day. Mostly I just don't see the angle for it over the 5 that I have right now. But if, let's say, Wonka slipped slips out, for the first time can easily make it in. Then at number 7, I have Peaches from the Super Mario Bros. Movie. It's a meme song. It's everywhere. It's an earworm, whether you like the song or not. And in that way, it could be like Everything is Awesome. It could be like Can't Stop the Feeling, like Happy. This is a popular song. That's pretty undeniable. So is it top 5? No, but I do think this is something that's going to land like a Golden Globe nomination at the end of the year.
All those songs you just mentioned are actual songs. Peaches is like 60 seconds of Jack Black saying one thing, which is very funny in the movie, but it's not a full fleshed out actual song. And I feel like the voters of the branch are not going to reach for a song from the Super Mario Bros.
At the same time, like, this song has been charting. It peaked at number 56 on the Billboard Hot 100. That's nuts. It's pretty undeniable. Like, this is going to be one of the biggest songs that is eligible for this category this year. It might not be one of the best songs, but it's going to be one of the biggest. It is a commercial success. Again, I don't think it gets in at the end of the day, but it is worth mentioning because, like I said, the Golden Globes will nominate it.
I would be very surprised if it makes the short list.
Then, number 8, I have Dance the Night from Barbie. This, some people are going to say, like, oh my god, that feels like it should be number 1. Pop songs don't really have a great track record in this category. Think Ariana Grande a few years ago. Dua Lipa feels kind of in the same vein. The song is fun, it's good, it's upbeat, but again, pop stars don't really get in for doing what they do on their albums here. Even like Billie Eilish, Adele, they did it for Bond songs. They didn't do it for their types of songs. Lady Gaga did it for a show tune ballad. She didn't do it for a pop song.
If you're a believer of Barbie doing something above the line, or if you think Ryan Gosling's an actual contender and supporting actor, I feel like the Ken song is probably the song that will get the push from it.
Then I've already talked about Gonna Be You from 80 for Brady, so let's round this off with Quiet Eyes from Past Lives. Now, this song is not very memorable, but hey, it's really worth mentioning because last year we definitely didn't think that This Is a Life was going to end up getting nominated, and it did because the movie was so strong. Past Lives is so strong that Quiet Eyes should be in your top 10. After that, it's also worth mentioning Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. There will be some good songs for that, but there were good songs for the first 2 movies too. Neither of those got nominated. Also, Flora and Son is very possible. Next Goal Wins seems like it might have a song attached, but I don't know about that at all. And then, of course, the social justice songs, Rustin, Shirley, those 2 movies are definitely going to have that sort of One Night in Miami, Judas and the Black Messiah song, or Trial of Chicago 7 that we saw so prominently a few years ago that hasn't really been a thing for the past couple of years.
To add one more thing for Quiet Eyes and Past Lives, regardless if you think this song is being nominated, it's making the short list because you can point to Everything Everywhere Last Year, which did get nominated, or even Parasite, another one that's just a very loved movie by the Academy. They'll throw in those in-credit songs into the short list. It doesn't mean they always get in, but they're definitely making the short list.
There's so many blind spots still in this category. We still don't know every song that's going to be attached to a movie this year, but I feel like we know more now than ever, and I've heard most of these songs. 7 out of my top 10 are songs that exist on the internet that you can actually go and listen to right now. That's pretty good at this point to say, hey, I feel like I can make a solid top 10, even though there's still some movies that we don't know anything about.
That brings us over to Best Costume Design, and you would have to be living under a rock if you don't know what the front runner of this category is. That is Barbie. Regardless if this movie is in Best Picture, this category and one other category that we'll talk about very shortly is in there at least for a nomination. I don't really see how you can vote against it for the win. I know these categories sometimes have weird winners, but Barbie, it just makes so much sense on paper.
I think we're going to have to really see in the next few weeks when it comes out, is it really a contender beyond this? But even if it's not a contender in any other categories, costume design feels really strong. I'm going to say something controversial a little bit later on, but I will say something that costume design has that another category we'll talk about today doesn't have, is that the costumes are going to be great for the entire movie instead of just during Barbie World. So yeah, Barbie is a really great pick for number 1.
Following up Barbie, I am a big believer in Poor Things doing something this year. I think it will be Searchlight's main push, and if it's getting into Best Picture, it needs to pick up some tech categories along the way, and one of those I do believe it will get is costume design. At minimum, this is a period piece. It's a different type of period piece, but they're going to have old-timey costumes in here. Yorgos Lanthimos, I know it's not the same type of movie as The Favorite, but he got that in last time. And just from the trailer and the teaser that we got, there's a lot of bold, innovative, and in-your-face type costumes. So to me, that feels pretty good here at number 2, number 3, and pairing that up with Dune Part 2. I don't think Dune Part 2 can win, but I think it's pretty in there for a nomination.
Absolutely agreed. Dune Part 2's costumes look amazing. They look a little bit different from the first one, still pretty much the same, but there seems to be some stuff added, specifically with the Emperor. We see more of the Harkonnens. If the movie was just still set on Arrakis, I'd probably be a little bit different on this, but because we're getting off the planet more, we're seeing a lot more of the different houses in the galaxy. I really think Dune Part 2 is a great bet.
At number 4, I followed up with Wonka. If we go back to the last Willy Wonka, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, in 2005, that got 1 Oscar nomination. That was in this category. We haven't seen much from this movie. There is a trailer that I think was screened somewhere, but it's not publicly online yet. So some people have seen what the costumes look like. We haven't, though. And at number 5, I have another musical. I have The Color Purple. This is one where I could see the movie slip and miss out in this category if it's not as strong in Best Picture, but I still have it in there for Best Picture, and I still have it on the higher side in the category. So this is a tech category where I think it could pick up a nomination.
You still have 4 Warner Brothers movies in your costume design top 5.
Hey, I mean, they may be setting the world on fire in not a good way at the box office, but they look like they could be doing some good stuff at the Academy this year. Napoleon, Killers of the Flower Moon, they're my 6 and 7. I just couldn't find space for them, and like Killers can't get every category, so this is one where it could miss out on. And Napoleon's a movie I feel like could hit in some places, but it's not going to hit everywhere. So this is one of the categories where I said, okay, I'll hold off here on like in visual effects and sound like we talked about last week. And the last few movies I'll mention here is ones that I could see a small angle, but I don't see a very strong angle. Priscilla, I mean, we just had Elvis last year. It seems like it's doing something a little bit different. The trailer shows off some cool costumes, but at the same time, I feel like voters were just saying, we did this last year, and the ones last year were a little bit more bolder and a little bit more in your face. Rustin, possibly. Asteroid City, if the movie was bigger, probably, but the movie is not going to get in anywhere else, and I doubt costumes would be a low nomination. And I guess I'll still mention Chevalier. It's one of those where if the costume designer was more well-known, I think it could probably stay the whole year, but as we talked about in a previous episode, it's a newer costume designer, and I don't feel like this is the type of movie you pluck someone that you don't already know and is not a category favorite.
The thing with Priscilla would easily be top 5 if Elvis hadn't come out last year. It's the same thing with like Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man, where Bohemian Rhapsody did not get in costume design, but Rocket Man should have, because voters were like, oh, we already did that last year. They just kind of blanked it across the board. That's kind of the same thing that'll happen with Priscilla. The costumes look amazing here, but like you said, we just did that. Are we going to do it again? And yeah, the answer is no, I don't think they will do it again. But yes, Rustin, good shout. Asteroid City, good shout. I would also put Maestro as a possibility.
Best production design. And you already kind of spoiled a little bit of a hot take that you have with this category. So let us know what your top 5 is.
All right. Well, I'll just address the elephant in the room. You're going to look over and you're going to see my chart. And yes, it's apparently an L. I have Barbie at number 6. I don't have Barbie in. And yes, my lord, Barbie Land looks amazing. But that's maybe the first third of the movie. It seems like most of the movie takes place in the real world, and I don't see an angle for them to give this movie a nomination if most of the movie isn't set in that place. I'm more low on Barbie across the board. I don't think it's a Best Picture player. I don't think it's an acting contender. I only have it getting 1 nomination for costume design, which I also think it'll win. Now that we're past that, what do I have in instead? Well, I have Poor Things at number 1. Poor Things is just a beautiful fantasia of colors and light and crazy architectural designs. It's a film set in Victorian Scotland where there's flying cars and Frankenstein-esque imagery. It just looks like a stunning piece of art. And the more I think about it, the more I think that this is going to be something that they can't look away from. If this is a Best Picture contender, it wins production design. Even if I'm wrong about Barbie, and Barbie is in the top 5, it won't win because Poor Things all looks like that. Whereas Barbie, again, it's just a little bit of the movie that is that big, that beautiful, that bombastic, that huge and colorful. Number 2, I have the color purple. We've seen some of the production design here for the trailer. It looks absolutely stunning. The work that's done here is just gorgeous. And honestly, if Poor Things wasn't out there, I would probably have this as my winner. Following that, I have Dune Part 2. Likewise, this looks like they're doing so much more with this movie. We just saw the new trailer for Dune Part 2. The visuals are a clear step up from the first movie. I might even eat my words with talking about cinematography and how it's not doing too much different, because the visuals do look different in this movie. All of the design is bigger, bolder, building on what the first one did. Then at number 4, I have Oppenheimer. And Oppenheimer I have here because, for one thing, Christopher Nolan's movies do very well in production design, including Tenet. When Tenet missed most other categories, it still got in for production design. Plus, we often see these kinds of lab movies make it in here. Think The Imitation Game, First Man. Those two movies are heavily set in labs, heavily built around science, around wiring. I really think that this branch just likes this style of production design and the attention to detail that is required to recreate a scientific lab. Then at number 5, I have Asteroid City. Going back to 2011, every year the highest grossing movie per theater average has gotten at least one Oscar nomination. And if Asteroid City keeps that title to the end of the year, it's possible Killers of the Flower Moon can beat it for that title. But if it does keep that title, I would bet on it getting one nomination, and that would be production design. Keep in mind, The French Dispatch came so close. I was definitely predicting it the morning of. It was in the Gold Derby top 5 the morning of, I believe. I'm not 100% on that, but The French Dispatch was very popular to predict. It's not like Wes Anderson's just getting snubbed now from this category. French Dispatch almost made it into production design, and I do think Asteroid City will. Now, this movie is a little bit more sparse. It is a little bit more low-key. That all just goes towards what the film is trying to do, and I think it's going to be in for this category.
I fully get your reasoning there with Asteroid City. The per theater average is a great stat to make, but as we talked about in our Asteroid City review, Killers of the Flower Moon will probably dethrone that in terms of per theater average. And Killers of the Flower Moon did what Asteroid City did for its production design as well, just like Oppenheimer is doing as well. So I feel like those three all can't coexist, and at least one, if not two of them, are going to be on the outside looking in. To me, it's Asteroid City on the outside looking in, while Killers of the Flower Moon and Oppenheimer are in there, but I can't knock you for having Asteroid City in there for the moment.
Asteroid City, I think, is just so distinct and unique, whereas Killers of the Flower Moon, which I have at my number 7, yes, they both built towns in the desert, but the difference I think there is that Asteroid City is going for this sort of liminal space, this sort of town that has always existed and yet never existed, whereas Killers of the Flower Moon it's looking for authenticity. Killers is going to be very impressive. I just think it's going to be less flashy. Then at number 8, I have Napoleon, which is going to have massive production design. Obviously, it is a Napoleon movie. There's going to be a lot of huge battle sequences. We're going to see a lot of palaces, a lot of very, very big locations. Ridley Scott does production design very well, even when his movies aren't amazing. But that said, I just don't see this being a big player, so I have it on the outside looking in. Then I have a bit of a gamble. I don't know if Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse would be eligible here, but the production design is something a lot of people have been talking about with this movie, and the production designer, Patrick O'Keefe, has been getting out there talking about the work that he's done on this movie. In fact, actually, one of the directors of this movie was the production designer of the first movie. So there is such an emphasis on production design here. The one question I have is, even if it is eligible, are production designers in the Academy going to acknowledge that an animated film is just as much doing their job as they do? And then at number 10, I have The Zone of Interest. I don't have this getting nominated, but the production design has been a point that a lot of people have talked about. The whole movie takes place in this home, and the home is completely integral to the movie. So if this film ends up being a top 5 contender, ends up being BAFTA nominated, Critics' Choice nominated, Golden Globe nominated, across the board, then maybe this one ends up being in the top 5. Then after that, I'll just drop a few more. Priscilla, I think, looks beautiful. It's very possible that they go for it with Graceland there. But that said, Elvis's estate has been talking about how poorly they did Graceland, how it looks nothing like Graceland, so that might hurt it. Wonka is a great movie to mention because Charlie and the Chocolate Factory always is a wonderful world with so many things to do around it, especially if it's a brand new vision for what this Willy Wonka world looks like. Also, Maestro could be very, very strong, could have a very unique, distinct look at New York City. And then finally, Beau is Afraid. It's not going to happen. A guy can dream, can't I?
Speaking of dreaming, I had a dream of Arrakis because in best makeup and hairstyling, I'm sticking with one of my biggest, boldest predictions I've had ever since January. This year's Dune Part 2 can't win everything it won the first time, but it can win a new category, and this is the one that I'm predicting it for. Makeup and hairstyling, we saw a little bit in that first trailer, and we really get to see here just how different and how more detailed the makeup is on a lot of characters, not just our main characters, but a lot of the side and background characters. There is a very strong argument for Maestro, which I have at number 2. It's doing it to its lead actor. Bradley Cooper is unrecognizable in the role. However, Dune Part 2, I think, is in Best Picture, and Maestro, I think, is not. And as we tend to see in a lot of technical categories, unless you're a sweeper, they tend to go with the Best Picture movie, and that is what I'm doing here as well. I have Barbie at number 3. It has hairstyling. What we've seen in the past, though, is you can get a win with just hair, but you can't win without makeup, so that's why Barbie is down at number 3. Poor Things at number 4. It's got a lot of makeup, but not on a lot of different people. It just on Willem Dafoe, which, I mean, could be enough to get into this category, but also, this is a category where it could easily fall off. I have it in picture, like I mentioned, in another category today, so I need to have it getting some technical nominations here and there to make that Best Picture package look a bit better. And at number 5, why not throw the MCU a bone? Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. When this movie came out, there was a huge press tour about how much makeup they were doing to various characters, and I think they set some sort of record with the number of people they had prosthetics on. So right there, that is a great argument to get itself into the best makeup and hairstyling conversation.
That's a great point there with Guardians. I'd put that a little bit higher. And look, I don't have Barbie in my top 5. I don't think just having good hairstyling is enough, and glamour makeup doesn't typically make it in. You need to do something to really transform people. I would add to your top 5 Wonka, because keep in mind, they're transforming Hugh Grant into an Oompa Loompa. I believe. I think that's what they're doing. And if that's the case, I think Hugh Grant as an Oompa Loompa is all you need to get a nomination.
Wonka is a very weird movie, as we've talked about here in multiple categories in a row. It has potential. We just still haven't seen the trailer, and all we have is some behind-the-scenes leaked footage of Chalamet on top of like a truck, and then we've seen like 2 set photos of stills. So like we don't have a lot to go off of. So I'm really anticipating when this trailer comes out. I feel like it should come out with Barbie. Other movies that are just outside my top 5 are the aforementioned Wonka. We have The Color Purple, Rustin, Napoleon, and Killers of the Flower Moon. They all have their claims to fame. I mean, there are set photos of all 4 of those movies out there. You can go look at that and you can see, hey, there's an argument because we see makeup, we see hair. It's just, I like my top 5 at the moment. I think probably Poor Things is the most vulnerable in my top 5 because it's just makeup on Willem Dafoe, but I feel like that's stronger than what the 6 through 10 here.
Poor Things is going to have brain surgery as well. There's going to be blood and guts and brains. But maybe that makes it vulnerable because it's going to be gross and maybe people don't want to see that. Some movies that you didn't mention that I just want to give a quick shout out to here. First off, I'd say Beau is Afraid. That's probably definitely not going to get in, but think of the shortlist last year. They had Crimes of the Future on there. There is an argument for putting really strong horror makeup onto the list, but not the kind of horror makeup from like Evil Dead Rise, the type of horror makeup from Crimes of the Future or Beau is Afraid. There's a lot of makeup in that movie. I think it could very easily make the shortlist, but it won't get nominated.
See, your argument there just brings more stronger argument to Poor Things because everything that you just said there is probably going to happen in Poor Things as well. Maybe not a penis monster, but that type of makeup work is probably going to be with a lot of the various characters and the surgery scene that we do have in Poor Things.
I would also say John Wick Chapter 4 is a potential for this category because there's a lot of work that they did, not just with blood and cuts and bruises, but also with some of the characters that they've completely changed with makeup, jewelry. I'm thinking specifically the very big guy in the club fight who was wearing a massive suit, had like glittery teeth. The prosthetics on him are pretty incredible. The last thing I'd mention here is if Strangers is a very big contender, the way that we think it might possibly be, neither of us are predicting it at the moment, but if it turns out that Strangers is Searchlight's push, it could get in for makeup and hair.
With that being said, though, this is the conclusion of our craft predictions for our post-Cannes Oscar predictions. So everyone out there, let us know some of your bold takes down below. Matt had some here. I had some here. I'm sure there's stuff you disagree with. I just hope that you enjoyed what you heard today, and if you did, consider dropping a subscription. But until next time, my name is Dyl.
And my name is Matt, and this is Fantasy Filmball.